You're listening to the WannaBes Mobcast.
Super appreciate you coming out. So we had a ton of fun riding with you a few minutes ago. Talk into my mic. But then I can't see Jay, so then we have problems. So why don't you introduce yourself since you're here? Usually we have, we're dealing with Zoom and all that shit, but you're here in studio with us, which is a ton of fun. So
yeah, we were just talking about that. I think it's way better to come in, and it was cool because we could knock out riding. My buddy Jim came out. We got to do a little riding. It's green and nice in the wintertime. Yeah. So I'm Jay Clark and been in the industry like a little over 30 years.
Almost as long as I've been alive, which is pretty cool.
So all I really know about your background is like what I see on Instagram and YouTube, right? You've been building bikes, I'm assuming, for most of your life now. Like, can you go back and just, like, how did you get into building bikes?
Well, so I started in the industry in '93 working for Wiseco, believe it or not, long time ago. Okay. And they didn't have anybody out west. So back then there really wasn't bike building, so to speak. So I was I pitched Wiseco on, they're in Ohio, and I pitched them on, you need somebody out west representing you. And it worked really well. And it took it was honestly like a year of convincing them they needed somebody. So I was on the phone with them a bunch and just hounding them. There was no internet or anything like that. And I would just be calling up and bugging them. And one of the main guys that I bugged was Bob Gorman, who owns Cometic Gasket. And that's where he's at now full time. And he was a huge help. And the Bob and Joanne Anderson and the Kips that owned Wiseco were really good people. And I worked with them for 11 years or so before they sold the company. And so during that time, I was going to races, to all the Supercrosses and Nationals, and helping promote the brand. And I'd be up with getting stickers everywhere, banners, doing everything we could. And I would do a lot of really aggressive, everything I could to promote the brand. And so I did that for a long time, and then it grew into where then I could start building some bikes. I'm like, hey, this is kind of funny. I rode the whole time, but I'd always try to have a decent bike. And back then I would only just have one bike, just a motocross bike. And that was it, just like a YZ250 or a KX 250. So that's how I kind of got into it and got started.
So you've been in the industry for basically as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
I was in diapers when you started.
One of the things I think is so cool about that story is that you were doing what we now do on social media long before it existed.
Right. So kind of
promotion stuff.
Now you call it an influencer, but back then, it was like I would call myself a PR guy in marketing, and so I was trying to we'd get people to run the product and have stickers on and those types of things, and magazine covers, working with the magazines. Those were all the things that I tried to do, and then that worked really well for a long period of time. And then since then, the first other big company I worked with is Dunlop, the last 18 years or so. Yes. And so Dunlop's obviously a great company. So to have them on board, and then in our industry, I'll just preface right away, is that in our industry, a lot of companies are getting bought and sold, and unfortunately, our company, the Wiseco Group, it got sold and ended up going to another place for another 12 years or so. Went there for 12 years, and then now I'm back with Wiseco Group, and so it's really cool. And I have a good group of brands that I work with Wiseco, Dunlop, FMF, and then that group, the Wiseco Group, they own ProX and Recluse and JE Pistons. So they have some really good companies there, and then I work with a lot of other brands as well. If anybody wants to, you can just go to our website and Instagram, and you can see all those great companies.
That's cool.
Last podcast we did, but the one before that was with Al Youngworth. He was the original founder of Recluse.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I've heard some good stories. So I actually went back to Idaho this summer and got to meet with all the Recluse people there at the plant, and I got some good stories about him. I didn't get to meet him, but because he still has a company there on site that he builds these robotic things. So and the past employees all really love him and have good things to say. So it sounds like he was pretty innovative on his thinking on and what it took to go forward. It was kind of cool hearing that story of how it started.
Yeah, it
was a cool story.
Yeah, it was a cool story.
I was impressed. And then we were nerding out on clutch mechanics and all kinds of crazy shit. So what does Wiseco cover today? What is that?
So Wiseco's huge and all forms of racing, but also in supplying pistons for down to little 4-cylinder race cars around the street.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, drag cars, drag bikes, boats, Harleys.
Okay. So beyond dirt bikes.
Well beyond. Yeah. And so to cup stuff, and then with JE also they combine in a lot of those efforts. So Wiseco's really a pretty big global company that covers they make a piston for almost everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, so now what you're doing, you're basically run your own business as well, there's a social aspect of it, but you're building bikes. Are you building them for professional racers, for just anybody?
No. So typically, what we do is we're kind of a, just marketing promotion. And so the bike builds kind of is I want to say a little bit of a secondary thing, but the main thing is working for those companies. Like with Dunlop, I go make sure that everybody's, the media's covered, like to take care of all the media guys. We'll do the shootout bikes. If you guys see that everything has Dunlops on it. We try to make sure all the media guys are covered. I'll help out with some of the guys as far as tire fitments when they need it. And I do a lot of tire videos, as you see.
Yeah. And so you go put Dunlop tires on everybody's bike.
That we try to keep in high profile. So, and then same thing with all the companies I work with. We try to make sure that any of the media people are using those products, and if they have any questions or problems, we want to make sure that they're all well covered so that they can then spread the word as well. So that's kind of the main goal. And then the project bike thing, it's just a good way to showcase all those products for the companies that I work with. So the builds, there's no big secret that most of my builds have 90% of those companies involved. I try to find good products from those companies to use, and luckily I work with some of the best companies, so it works out really nice that I have good companies. And then I'll work with different engine builders or things to work in different suspension shops to help.
I've seen you pull some of those like other professionals into the builds. Tag them in on the videos, and that's cool.
It's like almost an enigma in a way, where it's like you've got the mechanic side of it on one side, and then you've got the promotion side on the other, and usually those two don't overlap. Like your mechanics are usually like your guys who are not talking to the camera.
In the corner, yeah.
Well, I definitely don't like doing the office work, but my job is definitely more office than shop. So I'm on there doing emails and that kind of thing, and rounding up parts and organizing things. So
there's a real job aspect to it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, work.
and so one of the good things, I've worked from home for 30 years.
I love that.
With Wiseco being in Ohio back when I started, in 93, that's where I worked from home. So the whole time. So it was a pretty cool thing to raise our kids that way and be home a lot. But a lot of times I could do a lot of those emails and different work things late at night and then you could still get some riding in and family time. So it worked out pretty good.
You're way ahead of the curve.
I beat COVID. And so
I love that.
Everybody was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." I'm like, "Yeah, I thought it was cool a long time ago."
Right.
They called it telecommuting. We just called it life.
Right. When you're in the dirt bike business. And I've been to your house a couple of times, and I haven't seen all of it, but I know you have some real shops set up there, which is pretty impressive.
And we've been in the same house for 25 years or so, and we lived a mile away for 4 years, so we don't go too much. And we go up to Utah a lot. We have a place in Utah, so we're up there. That's why a lot of guys will see us post up there. Okay. So from spring to fall, we'll go up there once a month, and then from there,
that's some of your trail riding stuff that you post up there. Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's good. It's about a 9-hour drive from our house up there, and then from there we can go to some cool places.
Yep. So you've been doing this promotion stuff before social media. Has social media changed anything about it? Or are you doing the same things, but you're on Instagram now? Or like what's
so that's different? The thing is, it would be cool if I could afford like a Deegan or somebody to have somebody follow me around filming, because that's the tough part is when this stuff started, I didn't think much of it. And of course, just like most old people and old guys, you're like, who needs social, right? But it's been cool. There's some really good things about it. I could see why for younger kids, especially, and different people, that I think it's not a great place. There's lots of negative aspects to social that I see, especially with kids, and what it does to their self-image.
The nasty comments and all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
and it bothers my wife when she sees these comments. She gets all fired up and she's all mad. I'm gonna go. We just go, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Yeah. And it's no big deal. It doesn't matter. And most of our fans and followers will self moderate, and they will usually fire back at that person.
I've noticed that if you get to a certain level,
they just go, hey, don't be acting. He's doing this all for the good of mankind, and they start protecting, standing up for you. So it works out really good. So that part's nice. The social part has been I think it's really good for a lot of the companies I work with, because a lot of companies, we struggle
to build a real presence, right? And they get a few thousand, but
it's tough for all these companies. So if they have someone like me that's working with them, then we can promote their products a little bit easier than they can. And also, people would rather hear from someone like myself than from a company that they know is at least. And I do work with these companies, but I work with companies that we use the products. We definitely use them all, and we try to show that we're using them all.
Right. Yeah, I like that about your videos. So tell us a little bit about what it was like doing that promotion. I mean, you mentioned stickers and some other things, but like pre-social media, it's all the big magazines or all events. Like,
so the magazines was huge. So you'd make sure all the magazines were, anything you could work your product in placement wise. That's what you tried to do in the magazines, because that's all
ads
that existed.
Or articles, like what do you...
articles on the product. So testing the products, or if they're building, say they were building a bike back then. If they were building a bike, let's throw this on here.
Right.
That's
they do the shootouts and all that. Yeah.
So that's what we tried to do back then, and then you want to get it on racers, even local racers, because
interesting.
So you'd want to have the fast local guy in here, and and up in this Northeast series. You want to have a fast local pro running your stuff, and then he's showing up in cycle news and everything with big stickers on, and that was always a big thing. Is you'd want to have these top riders from throughout the country running your stuff. So that was because there really wasn't another, like you said, no other way to spread it, without social then.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting having talked to enough of the pro riders now. Like, these are all people who have obviously put a lot of time into their riding and their capabilities, but then they also have the social aspect of it, but I don't know if they've necessarily put as much emphasis on the social side of things as maybe they could, because it comes down to, as a rider, you're also a brand unto yourself, and you need to pay attention to that. You need to build that, and you need to invest in it, because if you don't, part of it is the social presence that you can bring to the factories that you want to ride for, or other companies, right? The sponsorships, like if you come to the table with a not just an incredible ability to ride, but also a social following that you can bring to them, you're much more valuable to them as a company than you would be if you were just a good rider.
Oh, for sure. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. It's going to get weighed out.
I don't know if it's quite hit yet.
There's still like it's 50-50, right? There's some riders who don't bother, or don't have much going on, right, and aren't taking that seriously.
And it's just like anything famous. You can be, if you're a top rider in our sport, you have you could have a ton of followers, and you don't hardly post anything.
Right,
you're a good rider. You're concentrating on that, and I get it. Sure. And they're not at the level or status that they need to have a person posting for them and making it appear that there's something.
Right,
and so they don't. And in our sport anyway, what we found that people want to see is they want things that relate to them. They want a little funny stuff, right? And so we have that, and it's one of the big comments we get is that all of our content on our YouTube and on our social is all family friendly. So that's a big comment we get, and from a lot of people throughout the world that are all happy that they got a place that they can show their kids and they can watch this stuff and watch all these videos. And so that's helpful for a lot of families and kids out there.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that, but that makes it's a good point, because you're also going to limit your reach. I mean, the algorithms are. They're not going to put you in front of
content
kids.
could sometimes be a little more family friendly.
We're not that bad. Not that bad.
There's occasions, but whatever.
Yeah. So I guess, it sounds like what you're saying is the rider used to be the sort of the platform, right? To get attention, and now you've got to have a social following. Even the riders need a social following in order to get out there. Right? Yeah. Just being a rider's.
Right, and if you're in the industry in any way, you have to have some type of social presence. Every company is trying to build one, as you know, and it can be hard. They get 10, 15, 20,000. It can be difficult, these numbers to go past a certain level without the kind of content that they want to see, which in our case has been, they want to see a lot of how things are done. And so that's really what caught on with us, was showing how to do tire changes. And it's like, so the joke now is, I posted one the other day that got 100,000 views, and I was like, just mounting a tire, and I'm like, this is like we put over 100 of these up, and so people
there's one a week, right? Like,
at least, and there's always people don't realize that I don't film every tire change. I just changed one out there, and I'm like, I already have 3 or 4 recorded on my phone right now, so I don't need any more. So we don't record them all.
I got to get a proper stand. You were doing that way faster than I'm struggling on my floor with one.
Yeah, so the stand's good. That's another thing, is you email us if you want the stand drawings. We had a really good follower, because I made a video showing the stand we used, and I just kind of I showed how tall it was and this and that. And then he made a drawing from my video and then sent it to me. That's
awesome.
We have some great followers. Jurgensen is his last name, and he's like in Minnesota. He made this drawing, and that's what everybody emails me. I send him the drawing with some links to a bunch of other guys who've built cool ones.
Okay.
And then now guys have cooler ones than we have, and so I sent him those links.
Right.
And so it's been really cool, and it's cool to post them from I posted one from Serbia and Russia this week, and UK I think was last night, and it's just kind of cool.
And you guys are just building their own?
Yeah. Okay. So they get the drawings from us. Now a couple people have thought that there's a drawing to enter to win.
So
it's not. We only have a drawing for you to make your own, or you have a welder.
You're just winning
buddy.
some work.
You're just winning some work. And so we email them the drawings. It's a PDF. They can print it off, and then they can have a welder buddy. And they're pretty simple. Everybody asks why we don't sell the stands. And the biggest problem is we like them heavy duty. So you can stand on it. It's really secure, and it's too heavy. And then if you can make it so it breaks down, and then it's going to be kind of flimsy and it's going to break. So, a good one, we have a guy that makes them for us out by Kauai, and he's $250 is one. And so that's what it would cost him to make anything, right? And then so you couldn't really sell them for enough. So that's why we just everybody can just make
another
their own.
$100 for shipping, and
it's fun to see everybody make their own, and it's been awesome. I mean, we get it's incredible. I probably send out, no joke, 15 to 20 a day emails for tire stand drawings, and I probably get, not everyone sends us a photo of theirs when they're done, but I get a couple a day. Back cool. of the drawings of their picture, their finished ones, and then we post them up with their finished ones.
Seth, I got a new project for you. Seth's
is he a welder?
The welder in the group,
Right on.
We're getting after
the engineer.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And so you've done quite well on Instagram in particular. Any particular secret to it? I suspect you'll say no, but
well, it's funny. Jim's here with me. The first time we tried it, Instagram, his kid had set up the account.
Okay,
that's
awesome.
And then his kid lost the passwords and shot.
Oh,
so we have more than that. Okay, so he lost all the passwords. I'm like, because we did, and we had it. We posted a couple things, and then like a year later, I'm like, okay, we should probably do this. And then we couldn't sign in. Like no one could find the email, so it wasn't like we couldn't even just ask for a. Because we didn't have the email, the password for the email that they put with it. So you can get nothing, So the old account's still out there, and I've tried to get it shut down, and they won't even shut it down.
Keep reporting it.
Right. So anyway, we started getting a new one, and unfortunately, I don't see a real magic pill for growth, but what I have seen, like my buddy Rado, Dirt and Iron, good buddy, his has been growing really well the last few months. And one of the things he's done is posted a lot more reels, and he's doing like 2 a day reels. And most of them show something cool. The engine going into the chassis, or bolting something together. Yeah. And so he has a lot of that good footage from the builds he's doing. Yeah. His builds, he does a lot better job of filming the entire process going together. I'm too impatient. Like I told you yesterday, we put together 2 bikes. We filmed hardly any of it.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, because I just want to get stuff done, and then I want to get to riding.
Well, you're absolutely prolific about posting.
I was just gonna say
like 5.
It feels like 5 or 6 a day. I'm like, wow.
I'm looking to do 1.
I don't know how you keep up. I don't know how you do it.
It's honestly not too hard if I just film it or photo and film stuff throughout the day.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, 8, 9 o'clock, I sit down and I'm watching TV. I'm not really paying attention, and I can make a few few things set up. And then Spencer, my son, helps a lot with organizing some of that kind of stuff as well, for some of the bigger stuff, the cool riding stuff, and different things like that.
Yeah, I've noticed you have your kids in quite a bit too. We've done a little bit of that. My kids were a little young when we first tried; they didn't quite get it. But
it's my daughter. She's older. She's 26, and now, and she helps do. So we reply to everybody, but it's not always me.
Right.
But I do, if anybody emails us, I do reply to every email, period. And so, but the DMs and stuff, it's just too much. So the DMs, they just get a blanket answer. Email us. You've already heard to email us. You need to email us.
So actually,
and then she'll go through and like their comments if they're likable and nice, and then if they ask a question, she says email Jay, and he'll help you out. So we have and my wife helps out, and Spencer, we have people helping out. So it's huge, and I have really good people. Like I told you, Rado, he helps me with a video and a bunch of other things, and then I have a buddy, Donnie Bales, who helps with a lot of my videos as well, and we've used a lot of his bikes for my builds. We did a really cool Kicks 500, and we used his bike, and then we did a YZ 250 steel frame bike. last year about this time, and it was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're just finding bikes that friends have that they want to do restorations.
A lot of the bikes, yeah. So people ask if I do bikes for other people, and the answer is no, we don't.
Okay.
And years ago, I will say I built a bike. You probably don't even know the guy, but Randy Johnson was the pitcher for the Mariners, and then for the Diamondbacks for years. Big unit they called it. He was real tall, and I built a couple quads for him years ago, and that actually kind of got me going in it because I made some good money from him doing it, which was really cool. He had the money, and it was nice to be able to do it. And so most of the builds are my own bikes or bikes of a close buddy. And then people ask, well, how can you become a close buddy? And we're full.
It takes 20 years.
Yeah, it's full.
At least, right?
So it's pretty full because and one of the things about building bikes, I get a lot of questions about it, and guys will ask, like especially two strokes are real popular right now to buy, say an 02, 05, or even a 95. I'm building 3 95 CR250s right now simultaneously at the same time. I have 3 engines done on the bench and 3 frames, 3 sets of suspension.
Are they all the same? Like you're doing the same things? Or?
Yeah, they're a little bit different, but they're just one's white frame, red, black. But the engines are basically all the same, and they're just going to look a little different. And it just kind of came out that I had a couple cool people offer me ones for a cheap, or a couple guys. I got one for free. It was just parts guys like, hey, I'm never going to finish this. A cool guy in Arizona. I'm like, hey, well, we'll try to finish it. And so we've been getting them going. And anyway, some of these bikes, believe it or not, don't make financial sense to do. You know, if you have a 95, just people might not believe this, but it took 7 sets of suspension to make 3 for those CR250s. And that's really expensive a proposition for a lot of people. And people don't realize how damaged some of that stuff is internally that you can't really fix it. And then cases, we have 3 sets of cases that are unusable out of all the motors, because I bought a bunch of extra motors and different things. We have 3 sets of cases that are no good. And we have a pile at my buddy Brad. He helps me a lot of the engines. And we have a whole crate just with all the leftover parts that we have to still go through and see what's left. None of the cases are salvageable, so I'm trying to find, because I actually have a frame for a 4th one, so I'm debating doing another 4th one.
A Frankenstein.
Right. If I can get some cases, I could get moving. But right now we got plenty. So I tell guys, I've even helped a couple kids from church and different things over the years. And sometimes a bike, they won't believe me, but a bike for free, you guys got a 96 KX250, and they'll go, and he paid like $500, and I go, it wasn't worth it for free, and it's not his fault. And people wouldn't believe you, but it's just too much money to bring that thing up to any type of decent level.
Yeah, if you're 10 grand into a build, you might as well have bought something, right?
And most builds, if you were cost conscious, the cheapest you can fix, even if you don't make it look nice, you just make it run good and good suspension, and then you don't even fix the plastic or whatever, but you need chain and sprockets and things like that, right? But if you had it all running good, it's $3,000 minimum. So if you pay $1,000 or $1,500 for a bike, or $2,000, because a lot of donor bikes right now, guys want $2,000 for a, what I would call a donor bike, a 97 KX250 or whatever. They want $2,000. You're like, and then I'm gonna put 3 to 5, because that's 5 is kind of the high. I say 3 to 5 grand is what you're gonna spend if you do most of the work yourself and get it all. It's 3 to 5 grand. And so if you spend $2,000 on a bike and then spend 5, you're at 7. You could have bought a nice YZ250 for for $5,000. Like a 3-year-old one.
So you better really care about that particular model or whatever it is.
Right. I say it has to be sentimental. Maybe it was your first bike or your dad's, your uncle's. So now that if that's the case, then the math doesn't matter, right?
Right.
So then it's sentimental. That's a little different story. The bike's been in the family. But if you're gonna that's why I think it needs to make sense. Financial sense. If you're just trying to build one to have a cool bike and then maybe sell when you're done, you got to be careful. Now on vintage bikes that are like in the 70s, they have like the Mecum auction, and now that stuff is a little different story. But for our bikes in the 90s and 2000s, you have to be real careful, because you put $7,000 total into a bike, and you're lucky to get, and especially with the economy changing now, you're gonna be lucky to get 4 or 5 for that bike that you got 7 in.
Right.
I'm taking notes because I'm right on the verge of doing a full rebuild on my bike. It's been so abused, just purely abused, and it's just hung in there for me every step of the way. Yeah, you start looking at when you first got there, like, does that run? I mean, the thing's always carried me, so
And sometimes it makes it up a lot further up the hill than you do.
Yeah.
When I saw it, that was cool.
Sometimes.
I was like, man.
I really appreciated that question when we first hit the trails and you were like, my kids don't believe you really throw your bikes away like that. Like it's staged, right? I'm like, no, watch.
Because
Hold my beer.
Spencer's like, watch. He's like, so are they really like that? Or are they, or you know, and I will say, you guys are really good riders. I think you guys show a lot of this, the more squiddy stuff. Your technique and the hill climb stuff is really good. I think if you guys were on new bikes with a tall tire, it would help a lot better.
Tread helps.
Yeah.
As Rich Larson said, we're showing the process.
Right.
Every step of it.
But you guys have really, I mean, seriously, I was watching the technique, getting up front, going up that hill. I was like, okay. But then I came back and I saw your tire was this tall. It's like,
it's a street slick at this point. I have to tell the viewers, so I was given a tire after this ride, which I have a brand new tire sitting in the shop. Tire's not the problem, time's the problem, but I appreciate it.
It was our used tire off the Jim's bike.
So, hey, I'll run it. All right. So what are you going to tell Spencer? Like, we really throw our bikes?
Yeah, but you guys are a lot better riders. You're just showing, I think you guys show a lot more of the carnage type stuff.
We have no shame. That's what.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't mind.
There's no ego.
No.
We just go out and ride and have a good time,
That's
film
cool.
everything, and
People get excited when we throw a bike away. So
it's not as bad now as it was like a couple of years ago. It seems like every time we'd go up a hill, we'd loop it out. And now it's a little more
kind of figured out how to manage the clutch now. Yeah.
Oh man,
That's cool. But I actually had a lot of fun riding with you. I wasn't, you never know when you go with someone new how it's going to go, and I thought we had a great ride.
It was fun. And I brought my dual sport because we went through town and brought my 450, those trails. And it's so green here in California right now. And it's just
beautiful.
Gorgeous. And it hasn't rained in 12 days or so. And it was still really nice on most of the ride. It was hardly any dust.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Just
think
great
beautiful.
conditions.
this needs to be the standard for podcasting.
Oh, this
now,
is the
where
format,
we have to do a ride, and then we go and record it in person
And eat a good lunch, a brunch.
That lunch wasn't bad. Yeah,
Oh.
good call on finding the restaurant I didn't even know about around the corner from me. It's crazy. John, I feel like I've asked a ton of questions all over the place, so I don't know if you want to
No, I have one.
recenter us.
So I wanted to one of the cool things. So I was thinking about this, and most people they build out their bike, they ride most of their life, they find a handful of things that they like, and they stick with them, right? And they don't really branch out and experiment with new things, right? Whereas you, on the other hand,
You're
you've
talking
built
like parts and gear, right?
parts,
Yeah.
Accessories, tires, suspension, right? Like you set it up with one thing and you stick with that one thing, and that is the thing, and you recommend it to everybody, and it's like,
And you tell everyone it's the best. It's the best tire. It's the best
you
suspension,
adapt your
whatever.
riding
Yeah.
style to it, and you learn how to work with it, and it's subjective whether or not it's actually better or worse and whatever it could be. And like you, on the other hand, you've dealt with so many different bikes across so many years, across so many different brands. You work with the brands directly. And so I was thinking, like, if you were going to set up your bike, well, obviously you've probably done this, right? But like your dream bike, what are you going to put on it? Like, go through that list of accessories and kind of like, what are your must-haves?
Well,
This could be a really long answer.
We'll go for a trail bike first, but
Okay.
for a trail bike, one of the must-haves, and I tell people, I get people show up and they don't run wraparound handguards. And obviously I've seen that you guys are wise enough to have learned the importance of this, right?
Those are the first things I put on. I like
so
my hands.
There's guys who say, oh, you're going to get caught when you go over the bars or this or that. But you know what? When you're out on the trail and you can't make it back because you broke off, your entire throttle, or you brake or clutch, they broke the entire clutch off. Yep. Not just a lever, but you broke the entire thing off. To me, so on a trail bike, that's one of the first things is wraparound handguards. And then I like getting the bars I like, right? So like the ODI Champ bin, I have a nice bin that I like. Okay. So that would be bars and comfort right there. And that would be the main thing on a trail bike. And then from there, then it's just kind of a lot of things I'm able to do that aren't as critical and necessary, but setting up suspension then would be next. That's really nice. And I work with Factory Connection, Schmidt, and Race Tech are some of the main companies I work with in Southern California. And what I tell a lot of guys is a lot of times your best suspension guy for you might be the guy in your town, because if it's a guy that you can work with at the track or that you can go back to a lot, that can be one of the best guys. Because I've been able to, over the years, to kind of go, here's what I'd like, and that can feel really good. And then as far as motors go, that can be, Again, I have the luxury depending on what you're riding. But for trail riding, today I rode a 450 EXC, and the only thing it has is a muffler and a ECU really as the main mods. And that's on a bike like that. That's all you need. The thing is incredible.
Yeah.
And I had an MX-12 on there, so that helped just throw up some roost and get up the hills. So
for the record, higher than either of us, which is we're pretty good at hill climbs, and we got smoked. That was
There will be a few posts about that later.
Yeah, we'll have some Instagram clips.
And then as far as motocross bikes, that's where we get into a little bit more motor stuff and more suspension work.
Why is that? I have heard that from other people that like if you're going to go ride the track, you need
suspension's really even more critical because on trail riding you can get away with stock suspension typically. The stock suspension is usually pretty good. For us being a little bit bigger, maybe most of the time you need a stiffer rear spring, like on the KTMs, like a lot of those. But for the most part on the track, you tend to really want to get it set up a lot. It's a lot more critical because you want to be able to do long motos, fast motos, all those things. You want to get the suspension where you want. That's a bigger thing. And then on the track, I only ride a 250 mainly and a 350 occasionally. I'll never ride anything bigger than a 350 anymore. And that's because I think a 250 and 350 on the track are just all you need. And when I say that, then I still like to modify them and make them a little quicker. And I don't ride a two-stroke 250 much on the track because they are pretty gnarly on the track compared to a 250F.
Right, it's nice and smooth around.
Yeah, 250Fs are just a fun. I prefer riding tracks where you don't need more power than a 250F to clear anything. And like a track like Glen Helen, you can ride Glen Helen even at my skill level on the main track and jump everything on a 250F and make it up all the hills, do all the jumps on a 250F, a stock one, and you're just fine. Yeah. So that's what's nice about a 250F. And a track like Glen Helen that I like a lot is that way. You don't have to be on a bigger bike.
That makes sense. We had a guy out with us 2 weeks ago on a 125 two-stroke that was wrung out, and he was getting up stuff. He couldn't do some of the big like loose dirt power climbs, but he had no trouble otherwise.
Yeah. And I like riding
the shit out of it though.
I like riding 125s a bit too. I have a couple still, and we'll ride them a bit.
Yeah. You get on and you just feel like you can whip them. You're just riding the thing for all it's worth.
Carry the bike around with you, like that was pretty cool. I think that. I used to be completely opposite of this, but I've learned more in the last, year or two that you don't need as much power as you thought you did. No. You need to learn how to fucking use it, right? And like make it work for you.
On the note of putting power to the ground, what do you like? I've seen you mount up a million different Moose systems. Like what is your preferred tire inflation system? So
I prefer tubes, and we don't have a whole lot of problem with good heavy Dunlop tubes. And so one of the problems I think guys have with tubes is a lot of times they get off, they're using the stock tube, first of all, and then they get a flat and they're like, tubes suck. And it's like, well, a good tube and a good tire with, powder in there, everything assembled well. We run tubes even in Green River and remote places, and we typically get about one flat a year if it happens. And then, so for me, the problem is trail riding is not a huge deal to us. We're not in Baja. Okay, now if you're in Baja and you critical deal, then I would recommend Mooses. That's what everybody's going to do in Baja. Any tour company, anybody that's taking you is only going to let you run Mooses in Baja. And
they don't want to deal with it.
Right. They want to keep it simple. They know it's going to work. Okay, so you run. Now for us, so the occasional once a year that we have a flat, and I carry zip ties in my pack. I zip tie the tire, and I don't carry tubes and all that junk. We just don't even bother.
It's too heavy.
We just milk it back to the truck. Yeah. We can always figure it out, and it happens so rarely that to me it's worth it to deal with that the occasional once a year. And if you ride smart, and when you're in rocky terrain, especially or rooty terrain, if you're not plowing into stuff, you know when you're putting at risk of a flat, square edges with sharp edges, plowing into that stuff. And like Spencer's gotten a little bit more than I have recently because he's starting to push it a lot more, and now he knows, hey, I don't want to get a flat. Or he's like, hey, let's put a Moose on the rear, and we'll put a Moose on the rear for him. So the bike he's riding, he goes, okay, so I don't have to worry about it, and we'll put a Moose on the rear. So for me, it's tubes with a good heavy duty tube from Dunlop. The Japanese tube, heavy duty tubes like that are really good. And then a next step would be a Moose. The others, I know you guys run some other stuff.
Got tubeless.
For me, there's a lot more work, and I don't like plugs. And there's other, and I've been out on the trail with guys who are filling it up and putting in plugs and slime and everything. And I'm like, man, this just seems like more work. Yeah. When I weigh out all that work versus the occasional once a year flat, I just like, okay. And when our trail rides, we always bring an extra wheel or just to bring an extra bike.
Yeah.
That's a nice luxury. So
when you can bring an extra bike, it's
I don't mean to show off, but we just bring an extra bike.
How many bikes do you have? That fluctuates, right?
Yeah, it fluctuates, but I have a lot, and
you got a stable there.
But they're all my bikes. The ones I keep are all ones that I've got a pretty good deal on, and I have some good deals throughout being in the industry. I don't rarely have to go walk into a shop and go buy a brand new bike. Like, so I've gotten good deals on the bikes, and so for the most part, most of them, I'm not going to lose any money on them. So it's I won't say it's an investment because you're not really going to make much, but it's fun to have plenty of bikes, and then I always have friends.
Someone doesn't have a bike, right?
Right. So it's nice to have extra bikes, and it's fun to ride something different. And in California, it's getting to where, like, we'll take vacation in Mammoth. It's nice to take the dual sports up there.
Yeah.
Years ago, I got tickets up there, and I wasn't on I was on an X. So if you're on a California legal dual sport, it's pretty cool just to be able to go. Yeah, we just driving by. We're
around,
gonna and we're good. And so it's fun to go in some of those areas in California, especially where you can take that dual sport anywhere a Jeep can go. It's like, hey, I'm going there, and they're like, well, they're too bad.
Right.
You can. That's what's nice about a California legal dual sport, and that's what we're going to see a lot more of. I think a lot more people are going to be be legal.
Well, they're coming for two strokes, so
it's going to be the only way you can ride eventually. Because red sticker's gone, green sticker you can't hardly ride anywhere.
Yeah, or 21s and up or whatever. You can't. You don't even get a title. You get a certificate of origin.
Yeah,
it's just some crazy stuff. So
they really cut it off.
It's going to be weird. We'll see what happens, and hopefully some common sense comes in there, but I don't know.
I wouldn't count on it.
It's a long stretch.
Not in Sacramento, right?
I think it's unfortunately going to go the other way. We're going to see other states where, you have your Arizona plates or whatever, and you're going to see those rolling over at some point.
That's what I'm worried about. Yeah. So luckily, I'm in my early 50s here, and I can, by the time I think I'll be able to, you guys are going to suffer more than I will.
Thanks.
So by the time it gets really bad, I'm not sure how much I'll be able to ride. So
random question. Have you ever ridden any of the electric bikes? I know some of them aren't super great, maybe not for trail riding, but on the track, I would think they're.
I've ridden a little, none of the new, like the Varg or anything like that, but though I've ridden some around just a little bit, and the feelings I got they're weird, just like
seems like it would be
right. And electric mountain bikes and stuff are weird feeling, but I think there's a place for that. On the dirt bike side of things, I have zero desire to ever ride one or own one or even talk about them.
I mean, they just don't have any range. Yes, that's fair.
So no more questions about it.
No, just get people mad. But a lot of people get excited about it. And it's like, are you driving a Prius? Like, are you going to go get a Prius truck? Right. Like, so we can argue all about the politics.
For me, like, what do we do? 3 hours or whatever on the trail?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that half of that maybe on the current crop of them. So
I don't see being able to do that kind of deal and to have fun and to be remotely, and we don't. And then taking generators, if you go, say you go to a place and you're going to take generators to charge it overnight while you're
running gas anyway right now.
Right. Yeah, so anyway, we can get the whole politics of it, but I love engines and everything that comes with it, and people go, what about you don't have to worry. I like that part of it, and that it has to run good, and you can make it run better, and this and that. So I think it's great. I'm not looking forward to it by any means, and I don't think we'll see what happens. A lot of it's a little bit smoke and mirrors right now, and we saw that with the first group that came out, and now these other bikes still aren't coming. So
I keep watching them, but like they keep coming out with stuff that's like urban a motor. It's like a scooter with a motorcycle look to it. And you're like,
Segway.
And the Suron, my buddy has a Suron, and it's pretty cool. But I don't know that I would use it if I had time to go do that. I would go ride.
But that's what I was just going to say. So I have an e-mountain bike that I use occasionally, and I love that. But even then, I don't ride it very much. Right? Again, if I have time, I'm going to go dirt biking.
Right on. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a question about tubes, since that was what you meant. Actually, it kind of surprised me because it seems like everybody's either in the moose camp or the tubeless camp, and not a whole lot of people say tubes anymore. But I was going to ask you if you've tried out those really heavy duty Sea-Loo.
I haven't tried them, and I don't know if we will in the future, but I think I like that idea a little bit more.
Yeah, 2 bead locks, and that thing's like 7 millimeters of.
And I still go back to, like, even my buddy Jim. He's done a lot of trail riding, and I think he's only had like one flat over the last 5 years, right, Jim? Yeah. Like one, and so what I'm worried about is maybe you put a lot of time, effort, and money into a system, whatever it is, and to really reduce down now. And like I said, I think a lot of the guys, the reason guys get a different, they run mooses or they run tubeless is because of a flat they've had maybe with a worn out tire and a stock tube. And then we also double tube a lot. So I'll run the stock tube. I cut it. I have a video coming out tomorrow, and we're going to put it up on double tubing. We just cut the stock tube and then put it in. And that does add some protection. It adds a tiny bit of weight, but it's still lighter than most other things and does really well.
That's interesting. So, what do you do for, do you... Because the reason I switched to tubeless a couple of years ago was for airing down the rear tire for traction. So in the loose dirt, I want it, 3 or 4 PSI, right?
Now, one of the things that people don't realize, most tires, especially the Dunlop side of things, none of those tires were designed or ever tested at those low PSIs. Right. The lowest are ever tested is 10. Yeah. Okay, so most of the tires. And so trail riding, I tend to run a trials tire or a gummy tire that like the MX, the AT81 EX, which is a great gummy tire. It's a little expensive, but I tell guys, for guys that's say you're taking a trip to say Colorado or to Idaho or whatever, and you're going to do a 3, 4, or 5 day trip, it'll last that entire trip. And if it prevents you, the way I look at you're out there, it's going to prevent you from falling a couple times in cases where you could damage it or ruin your ride.
And expensive is relative. What, you're paying an extra $50 or something? You're going to put that in gas and food and whatever, right?
And you're spending $2,000 or $3,000 to get to this. You're driving from Texas or whatever up to,
and so you're going to run a cheap tire, right?
And so that gummy tire is just amazing. They're
I ran one once. Actually, on the 500, I shredded it.
Right.
But
and that's
traction was phenomenal.
Right. And that's where you have to kind of be smart when you're running it to not damage it. And there are some other cheaper options out there than the Dunlop one, and they some of those work well. So and we've tried some and they work well. So
I don't believe in cheap tires. I used to ride street for 10 years or so, and one time I was short on cash, was in college, and I put some cheap harder compound tires on. It was sliding all over the place. Took them off right away. I'm like, I'm gonna die on these. This is not gonna work. And ever since then, don't fuck around with cheap tires.
Well, it's nice that I'm able to use really high end stuff. And so as far as the pressures go with the trials tire, we will run down with tubes in riding areas like in St. George, or we'll run down to 8. Say there are guys who run less, but I don't know that those low pressures are critical. If you're riding well, I guess. So I guess
that's fair. Yeah. With a good tire and some skill behind it.
And then like today, this kind of terrain, like here and in the high desert, I'll run a sand mud tire, MX12, and now it's being replaced by MX14, and that thing just hooks up, and does.
I was impressed. I've never seen that tire before, but I mean, it's basically
scoops,
paddles.
Yeah, it's like a mini paddle tire. Yeah, like a cheese grater.
It's so rideable. I know. And he made it up the hill tire. I'm going to blame the tire.
Yeah,
I didn't have a tire.
You don't have a tire on your bike, so. You said you were working with Dunlop for 18 years now?
Yeah.
So one of the things I've heard a lot is that how much tire rubber compounds and tire tread patterns have made huge improvements over the years. Let's talk about tires. What have you seen from the tire manufacturers that have made those bigger differences? And
well, with Dunlop, for instance, a lot of it's developed through the racing. That's where they've always been strong, is through racing, and that's where they put all their big testing effort is through there. So, and what works in motocross does trickle down, and then they will test then in Baja and different places with their off-road communities. So those compounds get tested there first, and so and a tire is such a tough thing, because for years people wanted there's we'll just call it an IT tire that lasts forever, right?
Yeah.
But maybe the performance isn't as good. But there's a lot of people out there who want to see a tall knob for a long time.
Right.
They don't want to see it round off.
Well, it's so funny. That's everyone's metric, right?
There's a price.
Wore out.
There's a price for that. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So and so you want to have this balance there. And so that's one thing that, and like I said, I did a trip last spring, and it was a pretty tough trip where we rode up in the 5 miles of hell area there and in Green River, and I was riding the 350, which I'm starting to ride more and more, and I didn't fall once, and I was like, and I was in some couple tough spots where that grippy EX tire just hooked up and pulled me right out. And what's nice about those tires too is when they're maybe too small for that, I'll throw them on the dual sport when they're just down to hardly anything, and they work awson.
Oh, they're great street tires, right?
Yeah.
I got a racing slick on mine right now. I'll go supermoto it.
So they work good for that as well. So there's been some good improvements there, and then there are a lot of options, and I know there's lots of guys who have a good fun, especially in the trail community. there's a really strong following with lots of different brands of tires, and there's some good tires out there that I haven't been able to personally ride or test.
Sure.
So there's some good options for guys. In the moto scene, Dunlop just owns the market because it is the best tire between, from MX, 14 and then into 33 into the more intermediate and then 53 into hardpack. They have a really good offering into there. So that's why they kind of own it.
So one of the things I've been doing, I found myself stuck in that rut of just trying one thing and then sticking with it and using the same tire over and over and over.
Yeah.
I got stuck on Metzler's for a long time, and then I was like, this is stupid. I'm going to try 2 different kinds of tires from each brand, and I'm going to switch brands. I'm going to try something else. Yeah. So I did Metzler's, I did Michelin's, doing IRCs right now, and then I was thinking about doing Dunlop next. So you have like a recommendation, like what are your top 2 favorite Dunlop tires?
So for a lot of the stuff you're riding out here, I think this MX-12 or 14,
I want to try that thing out.
That thing looks impressive.
That rear would be awesome for you out here, and you're going to get some serious traction, and your clutch is going to be happy that you're not spinning as much, and you'll be able to do there. And then fronts, I think that 53 or 33 front's going to be a really good front either way for you. The 53 is more when it gets a little harder pack on those ridges, especially when it's hard. Yeah. That's the more off, and that could be a great tire for a lot of those scenarios where it'll break away. There's little soft on top of the hard pack. So I think a 53 front for a lot of what you're doing would be good.
Try to give that a shot. Yeah. Well, I noticed you had a Recluse clutch cover on the bike you were riding today. are you running like the Recluse plates in there? Or?
Yeah, so we run the torque drive. So I like those. I've been a long time manual clutch guy, and so a lot of people go, "You're running a Recluse," and then they just think only auto clutch, and so and that happens a lot, and so. And Recluse is great, and I think there's a really good area and market for auto clutches. There's a lot of people who really benefit from it, and it will use it to get going, and then as they're learning and learning. For me, learning on a motocross track is a little different, right? You don't really need that, but if you're learning as a trail rider and you're in tough situations. So it's been beneficial for a lot of people.
That makes sense. There can be a lot going on the trail if you're brand new to it.
Right. And then, so a lot of people will run them for a while and then they maybe go, okay, now I'm going to try without it. Yeah. But the torque drive clutches have been awesome. We really like those. Durability's been really good. And I filmed it putting in the YZ250 yesterday afternoon.
Regardless of what you think about auto clutches, I mean, Recluse makes excellent clutches.
Oh, yeah.
Just all around quality products.
I was telling you, I went back to the company that last summer and got to see it all firsthand, and it's just cool. Awesome. The attention to detail and all the quality there is awesome, and they do own the auto clutch market. So anybody that wants an auto clutch, that's what they go with, and they really do. And the other big thing they do that's really good is their tech service. Yeah. They walk through guys. They're having any hard time on setting something up or anything like that. The guys that answer their calls and all that are really good at helping them walk them through it.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
One of the things I thought was interesting that Al said about the auto clutches was how it was able to affect the rider's performance through the rollers, and because it flattened out the peaks of the power curve as you were going through at that high pace, because you can't obviously modulate the clutch at that speed to manage it, but the clutch can, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Use case for it, because when I bought my bike that I have today, it came with an auto clutch on it, and I ran it for 2 or 3 years, and it was interesting. Failed. It never failed. I was like, I'm going to put a fresh stack in there.
Yeah.
And then I moved over to using just a stock manual clutch, and I just noticed that there was a big difference in things that I could do more endurocross style techniques that I was able to modulate the power a little bit better, and there wasn't like that disconnect between what I was doing in the clutch and what the bike was doing. It's not good.
Right.
As Rich said, there's not really like a little person talking in between you and the bike.
Yeah, for sure. So I think for me, that's what I prefer, and it's been.
Do you do really good? Do you do anything with the springs? You just
we typically run now with the KTM's. We'll typically run the stock spring, for instance, and then most of the other bikes we've been running, like the YZ we did set up yesterday. We run the springs that Recluse provides, and they like this one they do like 4 at this spring tension and 2 like we're a little stiffer,
right? And
to help even it out, and so and it had a really good pull last night. Where I felt pretty dang good, because you do want to get some increased tension to help the durability of the clutch. That does help. So, but when you increase some, especially some of the Japanese bikes, if you increase tension a bunch, man, that clutch gets really tough.
It's hard to work,
and that makes it tough.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
What do you think of big bore kits, just in general?
So I have a ton of opinions. I get asked that question a lot. And I guess to answer one of your questions, when you're asking about one of the things I've learned on all these different products over the years is I get tons, all these emails. I tell you about all the tire stand emails. Well, I get tons of emails just with guys that have had problems, TPI bikes or whatever. They have problems on bikes. And so that's one thing I've learned is that from different other people's different experience.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Right.
so I get lots of feedback that way.
You're playing help desk for the entire moto community.
we get a lot of input that way. And
So do you put big bore kits in, or?
yeah, so a lot of bikes we have over the years, and one of the, here's kind of my rule of thumb is what I've learned and I've seen is two-stroke big bores are a lot of work and expense for the return.
Okay.
So, and it means there's additional maintenance, additional piston changes, ring changes. And when something goes wrong, then it's like the whole thing's got to go back to your engine builder or to Millennium to get replated. Right. And the entire setup has to be fixed. It's not a simple deal where if you have a stock bore bike and something goes wrong, you can go anywhere and get a piston for it, put it back in, and get going way quicker. Okay, so that's my first problem with and the big bores in two strokes for the most part don't make enough of a difference to make it better than a 250F, a 350, or a 450. It's not going to get you any better. Now, it's a lot of work and expense. So with that said, we still do it a little bit. Tom Morgan does some really good work. There's some builders who do a good job. Now, in the case of KTM, where they have a 150 kit, a 300 kit, those are no-brainers because they come complete and it's factory setup. It's all Sano. There's no problems, man. Otherwise, if you do your own big bore kits, you need a really reputable builder to help you set it up, like a Tom Morgan Racing which can be expensive for an average guy to want to do. So on four strokes, then big bore kits are a little bit more conducive because there's not nearly you don't have to deal with nearly as many variables in setting it up. So a big bore kit in a two-stroke, in a four-stroke can be really good. But with that said, also, like I built a couple 350 big bores, a couple 250 big bores, and I've tested them against some built, just ported and mapped 250s and 350s, say from Twisted Development out here in California. And a modified stock bore one, in many cases, is even better feeling than the big bore one.
Interesting.
So I can see both sides of it. And now the big bore one's a little bit less money to do, typically. You can get the big. If you need to do a top end anyway, you got a bunch of time on it. You want to put a big bore on, instead you're going to do the piston at the same time. You can throw the big bore on there, but there are becoming a lot less available as well. Unfortunately, there's not as many companies making good Sano kits.
Interesting.
So there's not as many because I think the market's pretty small.
Yeah.
And with most 250F racers, that's where the big market is. Most of them aren't going to be able to get away with cheating, for instance. So they're not going to, so they're not buying them. And so then most people, there's not a big market to sell them to. And then no one with a 450 is going to buy a big bore kit unless you're crazy, right? So you could just get an ECU pipe, and then you're still going faster than you need to go.
That bike's outriding you. Yeah.
Right.
What about fuel injection or carburation? You mentioned TPI. What do you think about? What's your preference?
Well, first of all, I'll say is I've never owned a TPI bike. Okay. So then hopefully
I've heard lots of issues with them. That's kind of what it's all come back.
It's crazy, and it's really disappointing from KTM. And I think maybe they were rushed into where they had to get that thing out or whatever and change it, because the 17, 18, and 19 that we've talked about, the carbureted one, even though it came with a Mikuni and you could put Electron on it or a key in, and the thing was just amazing. Yep. Like you rode Jim's for a second today.
I did.
And
I'm going to have to buy a new one.
The things were amazing. And then they put the TPI on and it had lots of different issues.
Yeah.
It was just quirky in how it ran and all that. So
it felt like a regression. I mean,
it wasn't great. And I think most KTM guys will admit that it wasn't great. And you had to have it really dialed in. And then there were some weird problems, like Meg's had some weird problems. There's different people had
I've talked to her about
crankcase sensor and these different weird stuff.
If you were riding in like areas where it rains a lot, you were going to notice more issues. And here in California, where it's very
over-engineered, right? Like there's too much stuff on it.
It was weird. And so, and what's nice is the new bike, the 23, the TBI, we'll call it throttle body, So far, knock on wood, it looks pretty dang good, promising. What I say is I don't own one yet, so I'm waiting. But I'm thinking we probably will, but I want to wait a little bit and see how it plays out. But so far, it looks really good. There's already been a few little quirks, but none of them are too serious.
Okay.
There's been some weird. You're gonna laugh at this one because one of the funny stories of this bike that had a problem initially is that if you're riding it and if you hit the starter button.
Okay.
It jacks up the brain gets all freaked out and throws all these codes up, right? It's a power valve code.
Well, if you hit it while you're riding.
But it's very simple and easy to do. That's the problem because the buttons are on the same side. And then now they're like just like my EXC was, you have to hit the button up top. Well, I think during testing, none of their riders were that stupid. So their riders they have really good riders, right? So they come in and they turn it off how you're supposed to, right? Yeah. Well, everybody bought these bikes, they get out there and they hit the wrong button and then it throws up this code. And so I think they have a new update that fixes it. So, but it gets rid of, and it doesn't stop it from running fine. It just throws the code up and everybody's freaked out
because it tried to start and the sensors are all off because it's running, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But overall, so far, no drastic stories because with the TPI bikes, within the first 6 months, we heard guys were seizing and lots of problems. So far it looks really good. I've ridden them a couple times, a bit, and I'm telling you, the 300 on the track is scary. Yeah, scary. So a really good rider on who likes two strokes on the track is going to fully be able to, especially vet guys, like the Vet National. If you're a two-stroke guy, you rode YZ 250s, you're a good rider. You're going to be able to compete with 450s on the track on that 300. I really think a good guy is going to be able to compete, especially on the later motos when it's rougher. I think he's going to be in good shape. Even at a Glen Helen, I think he's going to be in really good shape. So I think that 300 is that good. So we'll see this spring, and fall. They'll have the vet race coming up this fall, and we'll see I think we'll see a few vet guys on it in different places. It's got limited use areas we're going to see it, but I think we're going to see it in some places where we'll see some good motocross guys on that new 300. It's so crazy fast.
When you say good, like you're talking, it puts the power down, that's what you're talking about.
So it has that traction, but you still have to be a good enough rider to handle it. Sure. For the same reason I don't want to ride a 450. Yeah, it's just too much. But I think that 300, it's going to take a little finesse, but it's definitely not as crazy as a built YZ250, because it's got the counterbalancer still. Right. It's got less vibration. So I think
that was the big thing I noticed riding his bike is that it's just so buttery smooth.
Yeah. And the new bike is that way. So I'm optimistic that this new bike, and maybe we get one this summer. We'll see. When the new one.
I'm kind of I'm on the fence about the TBI. So ever since we had the conversation about the smart carb, right? TBI is basically electronically metered carburation, right? I mean, it's using the same process. It's pre-crank, right?
So we had the founder of Smart Carb on, and he explained it. We talked nerdy stuff with him too, but he basically said what the Smart Carb accomplishes is what fuel injection is trying to fake.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think it's going to have to pass whatever it's going to have to pass. It's going to have to be electronic.
So just from a emissions standpoint.
He was working on a. What was it? It wasn't a sensor.
It's a version where he can plug in, you can plug into
the OBD connection, so that the computer can monitor it, so that it can pass smog. So he's got something in the works for Smart Carb, but
very cool.
But I mean, if you're doing track or whatever, and you don't care about that, then,
I think the bike's going to be cool. We'll see how much of them we start seeing come out. So I think it came out really late this fall. Right. Guys got them late, but I haven't really got to try one on the trail legitimately. That's going to be interesting. So hopefully we can do that soon and try one on the trail and really get a feel for it.
Are they? So I got this 06. I bought it brand new, 500, and rode that for 2 years, and then it was in the shop, and I didn't want to miss this ride we were going to do, and so I bought this 06 two-stroke off a friend. I've never ridden a two-stroke, and I'm 8 months into it. And I'm not going back. It's freaking amazing. But what I'm wondering now is, this is an older bike. I picked it up cheap. I was just going to try it, right? Are the newer ones, are they making more power significantly? Is
the new
300 two-strokes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think
in general, right? So you spent
was like
$3,000 setting up
3
that
grand,
bike,
yeah.
including the cost of the bike, right? So it's relatively inexpensive. You buy a brand new bike, you're spending 15 once you get it set up. Probably
I think you
closer
can.
to 20.
I think you can get out for 12 on a new
For
300.
like a 17.
That's 300 XC.
Right.
No,
the new ones.
the new one, but then you got to put whatever.
But I got a plate on it, and
Yeah.
Your
we talked
aftermarket
about
accessories and all that
right.
stuff. I'm just kind of.
I can't leave it.
I go back and forth on whether or not it's worth it to buy a new bike. Like my bike's a 2010. I'll probably spend $3,000 revamping it,
Yeah.
and it's not going to be that much behind a brand new bike, right? Like
No, at the
value
end of the
for
day, I
dollar
always tell
factor.
people, like, most of the places we go ride, you can be on a 20-year-old bike and accomplish the same thing. You got 2 wheels and a clutch and tires, and it's like you're going to get to the same top of the mountain, the same peaks and same valleys and everything. You're going to see all the same stuff. It's so I tell guys, you got to ride what you can afford, but also you want to be, if you're going on trail riding stuff, you want to be safe too, especially where you're at here. You could bail out and someone go pick you up if you get towed out. It's easy.
Yeah.
But a lot of remote places, it can be a drag if you breaking down all the time. And that's when we were talking about what to do to your bike. When like I tell the guys show up with no handguards, it's like also when those guys show up and you go and their bike's not going to make it through the day. And then I got to deal with helping them get them out if they go with us. So it's like, we don't want those kind of guys on those rides, on those fun. Also, when you're driving 10 plus hours to a ride, you don't want to ruin a day of that ride by helping a guy for 5-6 hours of the ride because he didn't have his stuff running good when it showed up.
Yeah.
The Aussie guy with the YouTube channel, he's got a whole video on that. Don't be that guy.
Yes,
Or something like that.
I think I've seen that.
It's so funny.
This is why I don't go 10 hours to ride somewhere because the condition that my bike is currently.
We're currently in,
We also don't have to. I mean, we've got so many trails around here, which is kind of nice. But
One of the cool things I thought we could talk about is aftermarket parts. Like I know you're sponsored by a lot of different aftermarket parts companies, and you use a lot of different parts. And so like I just rebuilt my engine last year, and one of the biggest problems that I've had was with aftermarket anything rubber. It seems like
Just
rubber
seals,
has just gone to crap over like in the aftermarket world. Like I would have almost entirely gone back to buying all OEM rubber parts if I can, just because it seems to fail. Like I'm wondering if you're having any luck with any particular brands of aftermarket parts.
Well, ProX has been really good. We work all their stuff's all supplied in from Japan.
Okay.
Everything comes from Japan. It's not Taiwan or China on any of their stuff. So, and most of it comes from the same supplier as the OEM. That goes for the rod kits, pistons, and all that. So that's one thing with the ProX stuff that's been real helpful on the seals, that side of things, is that they have that. And same thing with the bearings. They have Koyo bearings and really good quality stuff there. So, I haven't had any negative things that I've noticed per se, but that's the stuff we've been using lately, and we haven't had any problems. And we do use some stock stuff. And
that's what I was just going to ask. If you use stock or you go
on some stuff, and then we work with Cometic over the years on gaskets, and their stuff's all American made. And then as far as their seals, I think they have good sources on it. We tend to use those gaskets most of the time and have had good luck. Yeah.
I think I used a wrench rabbit kit. It came with like the full engine rebuild and everything. And
there's a lot of random stuff.
Yeah, like a little hot rod.
Yeah, and that's one of the companies I used to work for a long time. So we don't go too crazy here, but so these companies are have gotten bought by big companies who maybe don't care so much about quality as they do just numbers. And so that's one of the things that we've noticed with some of the companies is that they can just be looking at part numbers and it doesn't really matter our quality. They just see a seal size and they're just going to order. And so that's one nice thing about ProX is that they're from Holland. The guys that run it all in Holland, but they have a business model of sourcing the little higher quality stuff, and they want to be as close to OEM as possible.
So they have parts for like all the Japanese and European parts.
All the Japanese stuff, and then they have a lot of KTM stuff, but they're making more and more to get, because they obviously really concentrated on the Japanese stuff as it was going through, and maybe a little bit behind on the KTM stuff, but catching up rapidly on the KTM parts. So there's quite a few there. So if somebody's looking, it's a good source.
Yeah,
cool. I think we've used our hour that we.
I don't remember when we started.
we started at 2:30.
That was funny when we were going, and he said we hadn't. You didn't think we'd started yet, and then he.
Oh yeah.
Said we had.
Yeah. Right.
You're out of memory on this card.
That's
so
okay.
just this one.
You don't need me in it.
Yeah. The guest is the only thing that really matters anyway.
I had one more question I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
how do I want to put this? So there's like, seems like there's different personalities that go into like when it comes to working on bikes, right? There's personalities where you'd want everything to be maintained down to the T, right down to the manual's maintenance
about my brother.
Intervals. Yeah. Sorry, KJ.
He'll admit it. He's not shy about that.
There's that, right? Like there's the maintenance intervals that you would follow, at the manual level, and that's like keeping your bike running as if it was new when it came off the showroom floor, right? If you want your bike to perform to that level, you can, and there's people like me who run it for basically as long as it'll take until the piston's in there sideways.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I feel like, so I have a background as a mechanic, right? I worked on medium duty diesel trucks for like 8 years. I'm fairly comfortable with working on mechanical things. And so like when I look at, when I'm working on my bike, I'm not necessarily following the manual to the letter of the law. And then I'll make a how-to video about it and I'll put it up online. Somebody's like, well, you didn't do exactly the way the manual said.
You didn't set it to TDC first.
There's things like that, right?
Relax.
I just like, as you kind of have the experience working on bikes a lot, right, over the years, like you gain a comfort with the like what the bike should be able to do and how to work on it.
Well, and what I've learned is I call it the looking over your shoulder deal. And that's how I've learned, when you're taking the test and, looking over the shoulder. But is in life, I just look over my shoulder when I'm at the shops, the race team shops over the years and stuff. And I have a lot of good friends who are mechanics at the factory teams and stuff. And I'll learn what they're doing. And I've learned what the full on top race bikes that are racing at Supercross tonight, what they're doing. And on those engines and how they get tore down every week, and what parts get, analyzed and taken apart and every single part comes out, right? And so not every part gets replaced, but it all gets inspected and so forth. But as far as I've learned, a lot of things can be, and there's a lot of things we do that aren't per se as the manual goes. I mean, like in a CRF 250, I have the manual and it says to change the piston at 15 hours. I mean, it's like who's 15 hours is like, that's like 4 or 5 trips, for most guys. So you have to be realistic, but they're getting themselves off the hook by saying, hey, that's optimal. That's what it should be.
Right. They avoid the warranty claims, right?
Yeah. So, and we tell guys kind of real world, and I even post some things that kind of go against the manual, like in a KTM 4-stroke, we drain this oil there's a little extra oil area that comes out, and I'm going to measure it the next time I do it, but I posted it last week and it got like 800,000 views, on this thing. And a few people are commenting, well, the manual says not to do it. And it does. It says not to do it because it takes oil out of it takes oil out of the oil pump area, but it lets about 150, 200 cc's of oil out. Oh. So it's a substantial amount of oil. So to me, I'd rather get the oil out of there and then have more fresh oil when I start on startup. And I think the big problem is they're worried about people that are going to start up the bike and just take off. But if you start up your bike normal, let it warm up, don't be hitting the throttle, and it's going to purge. Because if you build an engine from scratch, a 4-stroke engine, there's no oil in that compartment that we're talking about. Right. It's empty right then too. Yeah. So it's empty on startup, and so it's empty there. And the engine's still not totally empty. There's still, I'm sure if you were to split those cases, there's another 50 cc's or 100 cc's of oil that you're going to get if you were to weigh it all out. So we do post some stuff, and I don't torque everything to manufacturer's torque. We don't we don't check everything. Yeah. We have a good feel for what things should be, and have learned from trial and error on stuff that does need to be torqued and stuff that really doesn't matter as much. Right. And
you get a sense for where it's going to matter. Right.
And also when you're going to break a clutch bolt off, not to go that tight, not to put a breaker bar on.
If you've been going at it for if you've been working on it for a few years, you got that feel like I'm about to snap it.
So you got to feel for it. So I'm a believer, and I see both sides of it. My bikes at my place are always nice looking. They're also we wash bikes and when I say wash bikes, it's also about, like, my bike's not even that dirty right now, but I'll wash it probably today or Monday. I'll wash it and it's also re-prepping it. I'll go through and check the hours on the oil change. I'll see if it's time for an oil change. Go through, check the chain. A lot of times when you're laying it, I lay them down on both sides. I have videos talking about how to wash and prep because you're finding stuff that's wrong. Right. Your bike's upside down all the time, so you can inspect it.
I get to
we inspect it on the hill.
So I get to inspect it, so we're always going through there. And I think, you got to find a happy medium there because not everyone can afford to maintain their bike, especially on these 4-strokes to that level to maintain them. And so for me, keep fresh oil in there, good air filter, so you're not sucking dirt. That's a big one. Yep. If you're keeping dirt out of there in a fresh oil, and then if you're on a 2-stroke, keeping good oil mix, you're going to be good. And on a 4-stroke, good gas and that, and these bikes run a long time. I mean, we have our 350s. We have 350s, 150 plus hours, no problem. And and they run great.
Yeah, I found that. I mean, my bike has just given and given and given and given some more.
You keep trying to break it.
And it always delivers. And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I don't do the maintenance like I should. Yeah, I don't replace every part when it needs to be replaced. But like, these things can go so much longer and harder than you think they can. Like they're just more capable machines than I think anybody gives them credit for.
Yeah, you're thinking your bike, you don't know for sure, but could have 1,000 hours on it.
I mean, it has to, right?
It's at least that high. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't worn through the Nicosil on the cylinder that I put on there when I did my first top end.
Yeah.
And it was worn through on the top and bottom of the exhaust ports at that point. And I've done 4 top ends once per year since I bought it, at least.
Yeah.
And I mean, it has to have had, I mean, we ride every weekend, probably 2 to 4 hours per weekend so, I mean, it's hundreds of hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Between changes. So, I mean, that bike has to have had.
It's up there.
It's over 1,000 hours on that.
That's what they're for. So you got to use them.
Right, exactly.
That's my problem. I only use it.
Never work on it. Yeah. Let's get some new parts on it, though.
That's true.
Well, Jay, we super appreciate you coming out and riding with us. We had a ton of fun.
That's cool.
Coming on the podcast and chatting with us. We appreciate it. Any particular place we should send people? We'll put links to your Instagram and YouTube and stuff.
Yeah, Instagram. My website, we have a new website, which we finally updated. It's DirtBikeTV1.com.
Okay.
Pretty simple.
I got to ask, sorry to interrupt you, but Dirt Bike TV, what's that? I meant to ask you before.
Yeah, we just came up with it. When we were starting YouTube, Spencer was kind of the one pushing for it.
Okay.
And we're just came up with a name.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it fits. Everyone knows who you are.
Right. So come up with a name. And in hindsight, we've seen many people on YouTube and social who are successful just using their name, and maybe we should have done that. I don't know. There's different people, different thoughts there. So
we go back and forth on that same thing,
right?
I
thought maybe we needed a name. Well, since you guys are
we have a name no one can pronounce. We've just gone with WannaBes these days.
It's very fitting for everything that we do.
Pretty much, yeah. But I like it because you've got Dirt Bike TV 1 and 2, right?
Yeah, for Spencer,
yeah. So I think that's it's like a franchise at this point, right? So
it's been fun.
I love it. So you said new website, sorry.
Yeah, you got a new website, Dirt Bike TV 1, and that's where we're posting a lot of our bike builds and stuff and like that. That we that are on magazines, but also there, and then all the links. We have a lot of discount links. Those are there.
Just gonna ask about that.
And then you can email us. And
so how do those work? People click through the link and they get like the codes applied in card or something like.
Yeah, so we have some discount codes, and then if they just want to help us out, they can you do either Rocky Mountain, just a regular shopping on Rocky Mountain or whatever. They can click through there and go there and get a little, you can get a little percent. So it all helps us keep going, and it's been good. So there, and then our YouTube is all through there, and Instagram. It can all be found through that website and stuff. And there's a Facebook, which my daughter runs and does a good job.
Nice.
I've never been on it.
It's really no one actually goes on Facebook, right?
I wouldn't think so, but and Spencer started TikTok for us like just a few months ago, and it's crazy that I had no idea. So we started posting on TikTok, and I thought it would just be kids and stuff and different people, like whatever, right?
There's plenty of that.
Getting tons of people asking for tire change stands. I'm like, so there's actually somebody capable of welding on TikTok, and working on that kind of thing. So there's a ton of them who don't use. So what's funny is I think people, just like you're saying with your tire, you get stuck into they're just using their social that they like. They like TikTok for whatever reason, right? So they use TikTok for that. And so maybe I'm like, how did they not ever see us on Instagram? He posted a bunch of stuff this summer, and we were just getting all these things, people writing us from, like, I'm like, how did they not know us before? Like, how was that possible? So they obviously don't have Instagram or don't use it.
Right.
So we're on TikTok as well, and so Spencer's been keeping that going, and it's
cool.
Yeah,
we'll add all the links.
Put all the links in the description. Yeah, we'll get people back there.
Cool. It's been fun, man. It was cool to come out and ride, and we had fun, and
we appreciate it.
It worked. I'm glad it worked out. It's cool.
Thank you.